Hello, hello, hello. A very warm welcome to all our friends, viewers, stakeholders, fans of Africa Rise with Susan West. It is a brilliant Wednesday, and I am so excited to be back here again. The weather is beautiful here in London. It's sunny, and I do hope that wherever you're joining us from today, that the weather is favorable, like we have it here. And so, as you join this broadcast, do the needful, which is invite other people, invite like minds. Let's teach, let's learn from each other. And of course, send in your questions and comments. And if you are so passionate about what you want to talk about, you can actually come on screen. Just signify by typing in the comment section that you want to come on, and we will bring you if you are so passionate about, you know, making your points on screen, right? So if you haven't liked, followed, or subscribed to our channels, please do so. It is Africa Rise TV on Facebook, Africa Rise TV on YouTube, and Africa_Rise.tv on Instagram. I am super excited. We've got Starman Alpha. Yes. So share, 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 and let's grow our audience. All right. All right. Let's get today's program rolling. Starman Alpha. Hey,
Hi.
Starman.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I can see you're doing a lot better. You sound,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Right. So welcome. It's been a few weeks we haven't had you, we too have had to, move things around a little bit, but
Yeah,
because it's so important what we do here, we cannot say we're not coming on, no matter how inconveniencing it is at the moment.
yeah.
So yes, One TV, greetings, welcome, welcome, welcome. Starman Alpha, you chose the topic for today. You chose the topic for today. You say
Yes,
black man don't like to read. Of course, we
yes.
know that. But why is it so important today that we have to talk about black man not wanting to read?
Well, today, when we're in an age where information has been commoditized, information is now money. The biggest tech companies, Facebook, Google, Amazon, when you look at all they do is just collating information. That's it. So if you have no information or if you have the wrong information, then you're at a loss. You
Right,
know, I- I- information runs the world today. And this this statement that the black man doesn't read, I didn't come up with it. I didn't coin it. I'm not the first person to have said it. I'm sure everybody has heard that statement.
yes, we have.
In fact, the statement I'm sure everybody has heard is if you want to hide something from a black man, write it in a book
Put it in a book.
because he will never read a book to find it. And this statement was written back in the 1800s. And, we still hear it being echoed today. So, I didn't invent this statement. And
Yes, yes.
I didn't,
We
I
know.
didn't just stop at feeling insulted by this statement. I thought to myself, okay, let me get to the root of the origin of this statement.
Right.
And also, I'm sure we've also heard the second statement that the African doesn't read, which is the title of tonight's broadcast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes, a lot of us have heard that statement, the African doesn't read. But many of us haven't actually heard or read the second bit of the statement. I can't remember the European that actually wrote this because it was written in a book. The European that wrote the statement down, I can't remember his name or even the book, but it was around that same 1800s period.
Mm.
And what he actually said was, the African doesn't read. The African does not read. He only listens to what he is told.
Wow.
The first part of the statement or on its own carries enough magnitude, but the real weight of all the magnitude is carried by the second part of that statement. He only listens to what he is told, and like I said, these statements were coined back in the 1800s. So this means we have to go back down the rabbit hole of history if we truly want to understand what these statements are truly saying, what they truly mean, and why they were even coined in the first place.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
So we're going to go into the rabbit hole of history, like you said, to try to figure out why it was said. But for me, as an ordinary Black person, I can tell you for sure why it must have been said, because it still plays itself out in today's generation, where we're
yeah,
struggling to just get information out there without having to put it all, like in platforms like this. If you want to communicate a certain thing to your community, everything shouldn't be brought to the public space where even the enemies or whoever it is can access that information. But because of the lack of, or the culture of the African person wanting to read anything more than a few lines, we have to keep, going through this route. Just before you continue, let me just recognize Big J's escape to Dominican Republic. That's someone's YouTube name. He says, blessings to Starman Alpha and blessings to die. And
yeah,
blessings to thank you.
he's
Bahideen to
actually my friend.
Bahideen. Here we are, our lovely Mama Africa. We love your program. Thank you, Bahideen. I'm always looking forward to you guys, to seeing or reading from you guys. I love you. I love you all. So yes. So really quickly, Starman Alpha, begin from where you want to begin to educate us on.
Before I begin, I just want to give a shout out to everybody who's watching, and also particularly to Big J's escape, because he's a good friend of mine.
Oh, I
And
see.
yeah, I mean, he's probably heard all, because he's probably heard all we're going to discuss about in our prior discussions, because we do have a lot of discussions about stuff like this. In fact, I made a similar program with him on his channel, similar to the one I made with you about Ethiopians and Somalians, denying their African heritage.
Hmm.
And the one I made with him was about Dominicans denying their African heritage.
Right.
you know. And something I was going to say on that program that I missed out was actually how, a lot of Dominicans, Somalians, Ethiopians will say, oh, because of their light skin, they're not really African. And I kept wanting to say this, but I missed it. You are more light skinned than many of them,
And I'm Nigerian.
and you're Nigerian, you're West African.
Full-blooded. Full-blooded.
Full-blooded, exactly. So so yeah, that was just yeah, welcome to everybody watching. And yeah, so back to today's theme. Now, before I even start, I started off talking about information and how information runs the world today. I actually have a saying, I don't know, a saying or a theory that the more information you have, the more options you have. And this is what we as Black people miss by not reading. We're not taking in enough information. So we're not giving ourselves enough options. And this is why we find ourselves, we seem to keep doing the same old things, hoping for different results, because we're not putting enough information, for us to have more options. If you don't have the information on what options you have, you don't even know you have options. you know so the African mind has been dislocated from his original reality. And this thing I'm talking now about options is similar to what I say about not knowing your history. About not knowing your history is akin to waking up in a coma, and you can't remember anything before you went into that coma, and or you're just at mercy of who you wake up next to, whether it's someone who means good for you or someone who means bad for you. and you're at mercy of whatever information they put in your head. And this is the magnitude of the African problem. The African mind needs to be reformatted. In fact, the whole, I actually believe that the whole planet, all black people, all white people included, need counseling, because this is not normal, the way we behave and operate on this planet, where some people feel it's their duty to keep some others subjugated and go about distorting their realities. But anyway, let's get back to why the African doesn't read. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is what happened before the statement the African doesn't even read.
Right.
What was the African doing? Now, the African had. Now, the first point I'm going to title that the oral tradition and the legacy of this oral tradition. Originally, when we're spreading all over the planet, we evolved. We developed language, and even the development of language itself was, it wasn't straightforward, but it took time before language could be developed to what we know it as today, with all the syntax and everything. But originally, we had something called an oral tradition. Now, the oral tradition, I'll split it into two. The original oral tradition, before humans developed spoken proper language, was a kind of language based on sounds. So we didn't have words for it. Imagine, the first Homo sapiens gained consciousness. Nobody gave them a manual to say, okay, read this manual and you understand the world. They had to figure everything out themselves. They had no names for anything, no names for the air, no names for the land, no names for any animals. So they had to work out names for everything with time. But originally, before they worked out names, they already developed the bone that enabled for language to be possible. Even Neanderthals are supposed to have had some sort of rudimentary language. So the original oral tradition was, as this original earliest, when I'm talking, remember when I was talking about those first humans from 200,000 years ago? The original language was based on sounds and mimicry. So if you wanted to maybe tell one of your tribesmen that there was a fish in that part of the river, maybe you point and then you make the sound for fish, something like something slithering through water. Or if it was a bird, you try and mimic the sound of that bird to indicate that that was the bird you were talking about. Right. Now, with time, words began to form. We began to have proper words for different things. Based, so, and I'm not going to go into, why words were formed into what, but words began to form. And a second type of oral tradition became developed, which was where language and all the information, the language,
Starman, your camera, I think your camera has moved. Your face is
Oh,
sparkling.
sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
All right.
Language and the information it holds, uh, uh, it needed to be transmitted, because there's one critical thing humans are the only species of animals or living things on the planet do, and that is transmit information from species to species, even if the person the information is being transmitted to didn't see the original thing. Primates, monkeys and gorillas and chimpanzees, they can transmit information, yes. But if a chimpanzee does not see something, there is no way he will ever know, because there is no way another chimpanzee can orally tell him what happened. Well, we humans could. And it's actually a very efficient adaptation, because this meant we could we could save our offspring all the time they needed to learn so much about the world, which was
Mm.
critical to survival.
Mm.
And what began to happen was an accumulation of information, accumulation of information. But this information was accumulated in your brain and it was transmitted orally. Now, in the last broadcast, there was a statement I made. That statement, in that broadcast, because I was on some sort of full bandwidth, so I was splintering into all sorts of different places. I didn't finish that statement, and I didn't phrase it in the right context as well. Now, originally we had this oral tradition, and this was how a lot of the oldest people on the planet communicated. In that last broadcast, I said that was why writing wasn't prevalent. Now, that's not to say that there wasn't writing in Africa, right? The oldest scripts come from Africa. Now, but then before we even had scripts, the oral tradition in itself was already well developed. And how you know this is when you analyze African languages and compare them to outside African languages, none of them match the African languages in terms of depth, in terms of even just the bandwidth, the spectrum of sounds made. Outside Africa, no other language uses clicks, like like with the Bush Khoisan. I don't like to call them Bushmen, but I prefer. But yeah, Bushmen for the sake of popular culture or whatever. You know, no other African uses sounds. No other groups outside Africa uses certain sounds, especially like in West Africa, like um, all those, especially those sounds where you have like a combination of two European alphabets, like GB, B, all
Mm.
those kind of things. Those
Mm.
sounds are, and just even just the range of spectrum we spend our vocal cords when we're speaking is broader than any other groups outside Africa. So our oral tradition was very well developed enough to transmit information that this information could pass from generation to generation largely uncorrupted. Right. Now, eventually, we began to develop scripts. I mean, it's only natural. Nobody can tell me that the Africans were on the planet for 200,000 years old and they never scratched a mark on anything. And after scratching that mark, they didn't scratch a second different type of mark and realize, we can actually use these marks to represent different things. That's just, I mean, even when you look at the second part of what I was going to talk about, when you look at the history of African scripts, now I'm going to just even talk about some. You have Meroitic or Napatan, which is around the southern Sudan region, the Nilo-Saharan people, the Cushites from the Bible. This script is said to be from 800 BC, old. 800.
800 years before Christ.
800 years before Christ. London barely existed. London was a collection of villages then. Collection of village tribes then. And I think Latin, I think the Romans went, 800 BC, the Romans weren't even around then. That was just the tail end of, the end of the, I think, second dynasty or the middle kingdom of Egypt before foreigners now started invading Egypt, anyhow.
Yes.
So you have the Meroitic script, and it was developed by the Nubians. Who, remember, the Nubians had a big hand in the development, in the creation of Egyptian civilization. Anyway,
Yeah.
we also have the Ge'ez script or Ethiopic script, which is also 800 BC, 800 years before Christ. Which is the Ge'ez script is from the area of Ethiopia today. We have Old Nubian, because the Nubian civilization had a couple of rejuvenations. They faded, rejuvenated, several times. Old Nubian, also 800 BC. Now, we have uh, uh, Tifanak. Tifanak, that's the Berbers, the original Berbers, before they became Christians, then Muslims. They had this Tifanak language around the time the Egyptian civilization sprang up as well. 3000 BC.
So that precedes even the Nubian one.
Yes. But I mean, I think the Nubians had a proto Nubian script. I can't remember what it's called. Um, and then you have Egyptian, well, the Egyptian script itself. That actually there's the Egyptian script. There's two versions. There's the hieroglyphs, and then there's the hieratic. The hieroglyphs were the main ones. The pharaohs and the high priests used to imprint history. The hieratic script was the everyday common man on the streets, written Medunetta. The Medunetta is the name of the language of the Egyptians, and the Egyptians, their original name is Kemet. Right, Medunetta means language of the gods.
Right.
Now, this Medunetta, the original hieroglyphs, 4000 BC. And then the hieratic script, the one for the everyday Egyptian, 3200 BC. And then we have, we have Proto-Sinaitic. That's around the area of Mount Sinai. Now, that's outside Egypt now, going into the Levant, where Canaan used to be. 2000 BC. You have Proto-Saharan. There used to be a culture in the Sahara just before the rise of Egypt, when the Sahara was still green, from about 10,000 years to 5,000 years BC. I don't know if you ever heard of the black mummy, a black boy that was mummified.
Yes. I think I
It was
saw
from,
a document
right,
on that.
yes.
Yeah.
It was from that culture. I can't remember what it's called. I mean, there's so many cultures. There's Soa culture, there's Igbo culture, there's not, there's even the European, I can't remember the particular name of his culture, but that boy was either Nilo-Saharan or Bantu. Back then, the Sahara was all green. The Sahara only became a desert like it is from about 6,000 to 5,000 years ago, during a period called the African humid period, when the monsoons that used to channel rain into the Sahara got diverted because of the tilt in the Earth's axis and rotation. Right. So it changed the whole climate, and that whole area now became a desert, sparking a famine. It was this famine that caused all the turmoil of the Aryan invasion into the Indus Valley, the subsequent conquest of Canaan, and invasion of Egypt. Right. Now, this Proto-Saharan, they had a script. And that script is 5,000 BC. Now, coming closer to West Africa, we have the Vai script from around today's Sierra Leone and Liberia. Vai, VAI, 3000 BC.
Wow.
I wish I printed pictures of it, but but it's an elegant script on its own. It looks very some sort of alphabet.
Wow.
Not even pictogram like the hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
Now, still in West Africa, you have the famous Nsibidi. At least 5,000 BC, but I know Nsibidi is older. From my studies of Nsibidi, I know Nsibidi is even older because
where is CBD located in present day Africa?
Southeastern Nigeria and southern Cameroon.
Right.
From the Jagam people, but it spread around that whole area. It was a form of communication. But one interesting thing to note about African scripts is that they weren't widely used And this is why Europeans have always said we were illiterate. We were not illiterate. What we practiced widely was the oral tradition. Our written tradition was left for more prestigious things, more important things. So with things like NCBD, instead of we didn't use NCBD to teach our children. We taught them with the oral tradition.
Right.
If you wanted to become a blacksmith,
Starman, just don't forget where you are.
yeah,
all these languages, all these cultures in Africa that had written way of communicating,
yes.
I would like for us to write their names out so we can put it on the screen for people to go and research after the names of these languages that Africans had developed.
Okay. Yes, I can.
The white man came.
Yes, I can. I'll post them so that you can write them out. But yeah. What was I going to say?
Please don't forget.
Right. Now we had a written script, but our written script was more focused on documenting important events, critical events. Now, something like the CBD, there's this famous CBD. I don't know whether to call it a document because, well, it's not a document because it was written on paper or anything, but it's an CBD documentation of an event. It was a documentation of let me see if I can show this. It was a documentation of a court case in southeastern Nigeria, southern Cameroon. And it was not written out like script, like the European text we're all used to. Let me see. Wait, hold on. Yeah. It was not written out like script. In CBD is based kind of like pictogram, but I think in CBD is similar to the Medunetta, the Egyptian script, in the sense that I think there's two versions of CBD. There's the more pictogram-like version, and then there's the more broken down like version that you can actually even use to write your name and other things. But then there's the more pictogram-like version, which I'm going to try and show, which looks something like this.
Wow, we can't hold on. I'm gonna take myself off stream so that we can see that clearly.
Okay. Yes, which looks something like this. Now, similar to Chinese what they call Chinese, right? Chinese text or script.
Yeah.
Chinese, they're like pictograms. So it's almost like you're not reading, you're looking at a picture. So you look at it and you just kind of see what it is. You're not reading the story like Latin or European alphabetical scripts. It's kind of like you're looking at a picture, but that picture is telling a story in itself.
Wow. Looking at this picture just explains how sophisticated African civilization was. So sophisticated.
This picture actually tells a story. Okay, sorry, can you do full screen, please? Let me so that I can
right.
See if I can. Yeah, please.
Take myself off stream again. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now this picture actually tells a story. It tells a story about a judgment case known as Ikpe. Ikpe is judgment in Igbo. Ikpe. In some cross-river communities, some European explorer, MacGregor, was able to retrieve and translate an NCBD record from Enyong of an Ikpe judgment. So this picture here is describing a court case. And each part of the picture has been labeled A, B, C, D, all the way to K. And in the text down here, all the alphabet labels have been broken down as to what they mean. I mean, I can't read in CBD. I wish I could. I really wish I could. But I know one or two people that can. In fact, I did an art exhibition many years ago when I was much younger with probably the greatest CBD advocate of all time, and in living times. He's alive today. A
Yeah.
guy, an artist called Victor Epoch. I personally think he's the greatest living artist. I think a lot of Africans don't recognize the significance and magnitude of his work,
Hmm.
but with time they will. And if you do get a chance, check out his work. His name is Victor Epoch. You
Victor.
understand what? Yes, you understand what I'm saying. His
Mhm.
paintings just tell abstract stories, and just like this is a story. So basically, breaking down this in CBD image here, what it's saying now, the A part of it is letting you know that a
Put it
court
back
was
on. Let's see.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to take myself off stream again
Okay.
so that you can see. Yes.
The A part of it here tells you that a court was held under a tree, as is the custom. Where is the A? Oh yeah, this is the A with the straight line somewhere here. This is the A with the straight line. That's a court. Ipe was held under a tree. And then the B shows you where the parties in the case were, who and who is to be judged, which is inside the circle. Sorry, it's hard to do this inverted. Yeah, which is inside the circle. You can see the B label. And then the C says the chief who judged it, who is also inside the circle. D, the staff of the chief, also enclosed in the circle. E, a man whispering into the ear of another, just outside the circle of those concerned. F, denotes a member of the party who won the case. Two of them, there are actually two members of the party that won the case. Well, two of them are G, embracing. In G, you can see the G symbol here, where they're embracing. You can see it clearly looks like some sort of embrace. And then H is a man who holds a cloth between his finger and thumb, between his finger and thumb, as a sign of contempt. He does not care for the words spoken. Probably someone who disagrees with the judgment of the case. And that was H, which is this one. Ooh, this one. This one here. Now, um, uh, he does not care for the words spoken. The lines, the lines round and twisting mean that the case was a difficult one, which the people of the town could not judge for themselves. So they sent to the surrounding towns to call the wise men from them, and the case was tried by them. That's this one, this line round and twisting. So this is the jury from the other town. And then the case was tried by them and then decided. K denotes that the case was one of adultery, basically. Hello?
So happy. You just made me so happy. Because why? To see how sophisticated we were, and to think that somebody somewhere, some people just came and told us lies about ourselves, and we believed them. We thought, apart from the Egyptian hieroglyphs, that there were no written there was no form of any sort of communication through writing by other African people. But to
Yeah,
learn that even older, um, civilizations before the Egyptian one that
yeah.
have all these, it is mind-boggling. I don't know about the people watching, but for me, this is a thing of
Oh,
pride to come to
I'm even
know.
going to blow your mind more. Many years ago, I stumbled upon a piece of information that linked some of the NCBD alphabets. Let me call it that. There are about 12 NCBD alphabets in the Egyptian Medinata, alphabets similar to that. And also, I think about 5 from the Vi in the Egyptian Medunetta. And this made so much sense because the great Sheikh Anta Diop said that Egypt was formed by people migrating towards that area because of the famine from the creation
Sahara.
of the Sahara.
Mm.
And because they were before the Sahara, there was Bantus and Nilo-Saharans there. They all went there. And there's no way they could have gone there and forgotten where they all originally came from.
Right. Really
And
quickly.
and sorry, let me just round this up. And also, uh, initially, a lot of people were saying, oh, that if there's any similarity between the Egyptian script and the Nsibidi or the Vi, that it must have been flow from Egypt to Nsibidi or Vi. But no. When you analyze the characters in question that are linked to to these 3 scripts, when you analyze them, you begin to realize that the Vi and the Nsibidi look more primitive by design than
Right.
the Medunetta versions. So it was from Nsibidi and Vi going to Egypt.
Right. Synovia Ridley is asking, where is E and F again, please? Because I think she missed the part where you're talking, showing what E and F is. She's got the other
Okay.
one. She says K is telling what the offense is. Where is E and F?
Okay.
Could you pick up that quickly?
E is here. And that is E is where a man is. E is the one that looks like a bent line. Well, in this bent line. And is the one that says a man is whispering into the ear of another man just outside the circle of those concerned. That's E. Just outside the circle. This bent. It's hard because the image is inverted for me. So yeah, this is E here. And then F is F denotes all the members of the party who won the case, 2 of them. This is F, 2 of them. And then G is where they're hugging, shows that they were hugging after they won the case.
Synovia, I'm so proud of you that you're following to the point where you knew, understood the part you missed. That's very encouraging.
It's
Yes.
because today I'm not using that
Yes.
contraption, so
Yes.
I can't show it. I mean, I can set it up, but since we're already started, I mean, most of what I have today is just script, just text anyway. But yeah, I mean,
Just on a lighter note, this adultery matter has been before from the beginning of the world. I mean, like even in this matter, the conversation was about a man and a woman, an adulterous affair.
yes.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, before the institution of marriage was created, I was trying to find the history of what was before marriage, and apparently men and women used to stay forever. A man and a woman would come together, have a child, stay together till the child was a certain age, then they could both move on if they wanted.
Right.
I
want to see your face.
Right. Sorry. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But yeah.
I think by nature, until the human race became so sophisticated, I think that is how, for me, from the findings that the observations that I've made with human beings and other animals, I think that's how it was supposed to be. But as society developed and evolved and became more sophisticated, the sophisticated brain of human beings began to look for ways to have a more less aggressive and less what's the word now? A society where
altruism.
Yeah,
we evolved altruism.
Right.
And
and so now, even though we term that to be the right thing, and that's because the larger part of society have decided that's the way they want it, doesn't mean that it is originally designed by nature to be that way. If you look at the other creatures God have made, the way they live and move on. Right. So let's not go into that so that we don't digress. Obi Man asked a question that I would like to take. Let me quickly look for that question. It says, does Starman consider the Adinkra symbols a script? Do you know about the Adinkra symbol?
Adinka. No, I haven't come across that.
Right.
But
It's
I'll look into it. Let me just make a note of that. Adinkra.
Adinkra. And Synovia Ridley says she's actually, I think I read from her where she says she's actually studying the Adinkra. Where is that now?
Okay. Okay.
Let
Ah,
me see that.
I'll,
You
I'll,
see, that's
I'll,
why we're here. We're here to educate each other, learn from each
exactly.
other. This is the way we're going to do it. There's
Even
nobody
with all
to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves.
even
So
with all my
he
studying, I
said,
haven't heard of Adinkra. Sorry.
yeah. Sanofi really says, I am writing Adinkra symbols down to learn about it at Obiman, she says. So yes, that's another one we have to look into now. But let's move forward with Obi Igbokwe says, you forgot to mention how the British went out of their way to destroy any traces of INCBD, which was used by resistance fighters against colonialism.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Carry on.
Yes. And I'll just take a few more reads and then you continue, yeah?
Okay.
African mystery says, by nature, humans are naturally promiscuous. Okay, that's that. We know that.
Yeah.
Mystery. And they says, us Homo sapiens, as a matter of fact, only started staying together in monogamous relationships as a way of protecting our bloodlines. This is, yes, absolutely. And Johnny Boy, welcome. Hotep, Johnny Boy. Right. So let's continue from where you stopped.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm going to get to what Obi Ibokwe said about how the British, but yeah, I mean, and Adinkra, I recognize the symbols. It's just didn't I mean, when you study these things, there are so many different names. You couldn't hold everything in your head and just
Yeah,
call it up like that. I mean,
yeah.
sometimes I think to myself, I need to install a hard drive just so that I can save information in my own head.
We're trying our best because it's we're doing it the hard way. It
Yeah,
didn't take
yeah,
generations to learn this thing. We're doing it in a day and
yeah.
in a few hours. So it will become part of us soon.
Okay.
Continue.
Now, um, I'm going to talk about our oral tradition a bit more in depth and compare it to a written tradition. Um, Many years ago, I saw a documentary about a racist white professor talking about how um, his studies of the African language leads him to believe that that's why the African mind was, you know, kind of backwards. I mean, the guy
Mm,
is racist, everybody knows, but and he was like, one of his main reasons was that because apparently he came across several people from several tribes who when he, spoke to them, they all said, they knew every word in their language. And he was like, how can you know every word in your language? And they were like, how can you not know all the words in your language?
right.
And he was like, well, I have a dictionary. He can always reference any word or whatever, as long as, but he gave his, but basically this was what he began to build his own theories on. And these are the kind of people that fed this narrative that because the Africans didn't write anything down,
Mm,
then, we must have not been civilized. Now, I remember watching that documentary thinking to myself, well, if you can remember every word in your language and you don't even need to write it down, that means your memory is good.
wow, that's a massive, massive computer that runs on is it a RAM or a ROM or whatever?
Bioram.
Yes.
Bioram, yeah.
For
That
you
means
to
your
want
memory is good.
to have the need to want to write your language down is because your brain is not as sophisticated and you need some kind of tool to help you remember. And so if someone else does not feel to have does not have the need to write down their languages, is because of how sophisticated they are. They're able to retain that information, therefore they don't feel like they have to put it down somewhere. However, we didn't understand that not every one of us on the planet as human beings were as um, genuine as the rest of us,
Yeah.
who sit down and have um, think into the future of how to just change, tell lies and change the narrative and just come up with something that never happened as opposed to what really happened. That's where we were too trusting and not
Yeah.
realizing that people will come, and for the sake of posterity that we should put certain things, everything down.
Okay. I mean, uh, our oral tradition. Remember, like I said, our education system for thousands of years. Remember, I've always said, we've been with the Khoisan. They've been around for 220,000 years.
Mm.
The Niger Congo people, they've been around for 140,000, 100,000 years. There's no way we're just sitting around not doing anything.
Mm.
Now, our education system, and I actually credit for some. I believe the education system was a concept started by grandmothers within the group. They had nothing else to do. Their
Mm-hmm.
childbearing years over, other than the men would go out hunting. So these women would sit down and pass the information to the kids while living out the rest of their days. Now, our education system was based on the oral tradition.
Yeah.
And you can see how it developed because eventually our own version of university is what we call Iwambo, where the Igbo apprenticeship model, where a young person, okay, I want to be a blacksmith. Then your parents will send you to go live with a blacksmith for 7 years. You work for the blacksmith, you do everything for him, you're not getting paid. But after 7 years, the blacksmith will set you up with your own blacksmithing shop and everything. And after 7 years, you should have learned everything you need to learn about being a blacksmith.
Yeah.
That was how our education system was.
For the
That
Igbo.
was for the Igbos. And I think a large group of West Africa. And this system, being largely handed down orally, meant that our people had good memories. And this is why, what's happening to us today is a deliberate attempt to dislocate our memory from the mind. Now, the oral tradition is information, memories, and knowledge held in common by a group of people over many generations. The oral and sign tradition was used as a system of education by our ancestors, not because we did not have a system of writing, but because it was just simply simpler, easier, and more efficient to transmit the information than everybody maybe carving in CBD or Vi on wood or something or on clay tablets.
Yeah.
If you can remember the information, why write it down? And this is how we taught our children for centuries, thousands of years even. And it's also much more. To transmit the information to someone, you just tell them. You don't need to give them a book or anything. As long as you just explain yourself properly, they will get it. And like I said, we had scripts, but it was only used to preserve critical things like court cases and all that. Now, the thing with the oral tradition is that it depends largely on trust. And because our societies have become highly altruistic, we're already living largely on trust anyway. That's why the oral tradition was very successful in our societies. You trusted that nobody was going to lie to you because our societies was very inclusive. Everybody was working for each other. So there was no incentive for anybody to actually lie to you. So there was a lot of trust. They told you information as best as you could be given that information. Yes, the information might be biased due to ignorance or some sort of blind spot or ignorance, but it wasn't intentionally to deceive you. Right.
That would explain really quickly. That would explain why before we had the legal tender as what we have today as money, that
thank you.
the barter would work. where a village produces a lot of yam and they come to a certain spot and they leave it, and someone else from the other village come with a lot of vegetables or whatever it is, and they just pick what they need to pick and leave what they need to leave on trust. We had a
Thank
society
you.
that was so sophisticated like that.
Like I said, our societies, being Republican, live and let live, were built on trust. Were built centrally on trust. In fact, what you just said now about barter, somebody will bring his yam to the market, somebody will bring his vegetables. I'll even clarify the story for you.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, we had a unique concept found nowhere else, not even in all parts of Africa, only in sub-Saharan Africa. We had a unique concept, something called trust markets.
Wow.
A market where, okay, a market run by trust. Yeah? Now, let me break it down. Now, imagine you're a palm wine tapper. You have to climb the palm wine tree, you tap the wine, and then you have to sell it to make money because you can't drink everything, right? But then you also have other things you're doing. You have maybe your goats, your chickens, you have your family you have to look after. You still have to go hunt because your family cannot live by palm wine alone. But you need to sell some of your palm wine because you've tapped enough for not just you.
Mm-hmm.
And because you also know members of your tribe like palm wine, so you're not tapping for just you because not everybody in your tribe can tap palm wine.
Right.
So you take your palm wine to the market. Now, you could sit by your palm wine in the market and watch it all day. Yeah. But then because you have things to do, and because we were largely a very trusting society back then, yeah, this is why they call them trust markets. You have your store selling palm wine. I have my store selling palm oil. Somebody else will have, maybe Zenobia will have a store selling, I don't know, cassava. Obi will have his own store selling yam. But then, because we're also industrious people, we deemed it a waste of our time just to sit down waiting for somebody to come and buy. So what we'll do will be, we'll leave whatever we're selling in our stores and go about our business. Next to my palm wine, if my palm wine costs 10 calories, I'll leave 10 stones next to it.
Wow.
So that if anybody comes and they see 10 stones, they know the palm wine costs 10 stones and they will leave 10 calories, take the palm wine and go. And there must have been no fraud for this system to have carried on. It only started dying off when people like me and you were young. Do you remember when we were young, we're still doing it on some level where maybe your auntie or your grandmom would take whatever she was selling to the front of the house and leave it, go back into the house?
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes. Right.
Trust market. It was successful. We were not frauding each other. We will not go there, see 10 stones, drop 8 calories and go. No. Why? Because our societies, we knew each other as well. I mean, we were very communal. We were Republicans. We knew each other. So it's only a matter of investigation. And you get a court case like in CBD. They will be investigating who stole the palm wine.
And without any CCTV cameras, they always somehow found who the person is.
Because we already had the concept of one God, Chukwu Okike Abiyama, people were compelled to be honest. Not by fear, but just out of respect and just mutual live and let live.
Yes. So did you address Obi Bokre's and comment about NCBD and the British invasion to destroy NCBD?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna get to that now. The great weakness of an oral tradition like we had is that if a major disaster hits your group, and dislocates this oral tradition for a generation or two, so much information is lost. That's the great weakness compared to a written tradition.
Right.
Because when you write something down, as long as you have copies and copies and copies, unless the person trying to destroy your civilization or culture finds every single copy, that information will survive. But even then, that's not to say that the oral tradition is not resilient, is very resilient. The fact that me and you can be having this kind of conversation today, still remembering trust markets, is a testament to how resilient the oral tradition is. Because, like I said, this is something to do with deep memory and collective memory as well. A lot of it might be lost, but the bits that remain will remain. And this is why no other continent outside Africa has as powerful myths as the African continent. Now,
Right.
why Europeans tend to try and say, oh, the written tradition is the way to go, is because, like I said, the written tradition is hard to destroy all the information unless you burn every single book, which can be like when the Muslim conquest, those guys burned books. Those guys destroyed, or when they burnt the Library of Alexandria, the Romans.
Yeah.
So yes, information can still be lost. And just to show you, information lost to the point, like, they had to discover the earth was round twice. they discovered it before, then forgot about it because they burnt the books, then discovered it again. So it still has some of the weaknesses of the oral tradition. It's just that because it's actually written, it's been removed from the body and kept somewhere. So if you genocide everybody,
yes,
sorry?
And can be replicated into many
exactly
units.
So even if you killed off everybody from that tribe, as long as that information survives, memory of them will survive. But if the whole tribe was oral and you killed everybody somehow, then that tribe and their memory is gone. So right. This is why the Europeans sing so much about their oral tradition. And also another thing, their written tradition. Another thing their written tradition affords them is that they can actually forget huge bits of their own information conveniently, just because they want to forget, knowing fully well that all they need to do is pull out that book again and reference it and remember. That's why today.
And of course, it is with the written, in the writing is where they got to mess up the entire story as it happened, because of course they had the liberty to write what they wanted to write, to take out what they wanted to take out, and to add what they wanted to add.
Exactly.
And that's why we became victims of what we call identity crisis of today.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, our forefathers didn't realize the impact it had, that we had to read those books written by the people who didn't want us to know who we are. And so we began to believe their own version or tale of who we are.
Exactly.
And this has happened to us generations over. And so
exactly. So now, let me get on to. So basically, now they came in with their conquest of Africa. So we started with the Arabs.
Yes.
Then the Christian Europeans. Starting with the Muslim Arabs, then the Christian Europeans. And they very quickly realized, because the main mission was slavery. And slavery is not just about putting chains on somebody. Slavery is not just about the physical enslavement. Slavery starts with the head.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed to reprogram us. I always say this: the human brain, and I think it's very useful to think of the brain like this. Yes. The human brain is the most advanced computer known to man. It's programmable, it's pliable, and we were reprogrammed. What they did was they dislocated our oral tradition They knew what they were doing, dislodged it for 2, 3 generations.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, they were imposing their own ideologies. Yeah.
Mm.
Now, now, so there's a format they used. So this format, you have to look at it in terms of conquest and captivity.
Mm.
Yeah. When you extend conquest and captivity, about this is about how we're subdued.
Yes.
So what do you need to achieve conquest and captivity? You need soldiers and missionaries, which was what they used during slavery and colonialism. They are soldiers sailing to our lands, and they are missionaries carrying the Bible on the same ships with their soldiers. That's how they came. Now, with soldiers and missionaries, like I said, coming on slave ships with the aim of pacification, holding the slave whip. The soldiers were holding the slave whip. The missionaries were coming to pacify with the Bible. The fundamental ideologies they were coming to bring to us were capitalism and Christianity, which were completely antithetical to what we practiced. We practiced our republicanism, which was about altruism, egalitarianism. The whole community is a whole entity. It's not just about me, me, me.
Yes.
I'm the king. I conquered. I'm making all the profits. Where their societies, feudal, capitalist, being hierarchical, are very self-orientated. It's all about me. I'm the king. I want to be the king. I have to go and conquer. I have to make profits. And you don't care at whose expense. I mean, look at the history of their kings. This is why I say, the history of kings, presidents, and CEOs is the history of psychopaths. Look at the history of their kings. Just to sit on a chair and put a piece of metal on your head, you kill your brothers, kill your family. I mean, look at the history of the Ottomans. A king will have so many sons, not just from his wife, but from his mistresses, from his harems. At some point, he's got 30 sons. And then as soon as he dies, the strongest son murders the other 29 sons, just so that there is no challenge. And you tell me this is not psychopathy?
Wild.
you
Wild.
you murder your own blood, which goes against the very essence of altruism. You murder. It's because of altruism a cousin will sacrifice himself or herself for you. But then no, you're murdering your own brother, your blood, just so that you sit on a chair and put a piece of metal on your head. This
It's
is
just
why
like
I have.
the Lion King. It's just like the Lion King, where he finds a pride with no, and he wants to take over. What does he do?
Yes.
To make sure that he overthrows the big boss of that family, he will then go ahead to even kill the
Yes.
young one, all of them, so that he can take over their mother.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Very,
That's
very,
wild.
very selfish. I call it the alpha male model.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the ethnic groups outside Africa didn't grow past that. They got stuck in it. The Africans and the Australoids, we rose above that and embraced altruism more than any other groups in human history.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say something just so that people watch out for this. Look at what happens when a young white kid goes into an African village and how all the African kids react to him. And look at what happens when a black kid goes into a European town and how all the European kids react to him.
Right.
The African kids, they're all, wanting to play. Well, hey, how are you? They know the kid is different,
yes,
but they want to include the difference. They are enthusiastic about including the difference. But then when you switch it around to the European version, you see all the kids standing around in corner looking, pointing. And even the ones that get close, they touch the hair. What's wrong with your hair? It's like, like, I don't know. I mean, I said something.
They're also victims of the lies told by their forefathers.
Yes, and I'm going to get to that as well. The problem of Eurocentric history. Now, so I've talked about the systems they brought to us, capitalism and Christianity, you know, which is, and the capitalism was a structure to seize our rights on all levels, property, human, everything. You know, that our rights are locked away somewhere at the bottom in that hierarchy, that pyramid of capitalism. And then Christianity was a tool to reprogram our mind. It's like I always say, like I was saying earlier, the human brain is a computer, the most advanced computer known to man. The brain works like a computer. The brain has a part of it that functions as RAM, random access memory.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part you use when you need to do something based on adrenaline, like maybe a bicycle is coming to hit you and adrenaline and you jump.
Right.
It's the RAM part of your brain. Because when people are in that state of adrenaline, they report seeing things in slow motion. But what actually means they are acting faster than they their brain is processing faster than they normally would. So the human brain is modeled on in fact, the computer is modeled on the human brain. And like any computer, as a computer needs an operating system, as you have Windows or Apple OS or Linux, the brain too needs an operating system. This is why I've been asking that question, which is more important to you as a Black person, being an African or being a Christian or Muslim? Because the African way, that African republicanism, that African Ubuntu lifestyle was an operating system. The Europeans uninstalled it and installed Christianity into us. And when you look at the history of everything Europeans have given us, come on, why are we even still operating their systems and structures? Nothing they've brought to us has worked, from capitalism. Even the Christianity, look at what the Christians are doing today in Nigeria, buying private jet for their pastors. You know, I always tell Christians this, that, okay, let's even say the government decided they weren't going to do anything for the people. Do you Christians realize that all the money you've given pastors in Africa to buy all their private jets, if you guys collected that money yourselves, you could have built your own infrastructure, hospitals, roads, schools, everything. How much is a private jet? $5 million. That's enough to build at least 2 world-class hospitals. But some pastors have 2 private jets. You know, their villa alone, millions of dollars. You know, villa in London, villa in Nigeria, Lagos, Abuja, Accra, South Africa, America. Just one man.
Yes.
And basically, what Christianity has done to us in Africa is instead of one man feeding the multitude, no. They flipped it on us. The multitude is feeding one man. That's what religion has done to us.
Right.
And yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm talking about the African not even reading. Like I said, we had our scripts in CBD. And I'm sure back then, apart from our oral tradition, some of us still understood in CBD on some level. Because we would have been seeing the symbols on our clay pots, on plaques, you know, different places. And those things were actually used to convey messages. So we were literate to some degree in our own script. We can't have a script and not be literate in it. Now, the big hoo-ha about literacy is about the European or Europoid languages. Can you speak some Latin-based language, French, English, Spanish? That's it. That's the big hoo-ha about, are you literate? Now, let's go back to history a bit. When the Europeans first came, they forced Christianity on us, but they were just telling us the Christianity. They were reading it out to us. They didn't let us read the Bible. Even the slaves that got taken to America, they didn't let them read anything. Now, if they're not letting you read the Bible, they're not going to let you read physics and chemistry. They didn't let us read anything. But then, let us also bear in mind that the very first book they gave us to read was a heavily edited version of the Bible.
Mm.
Come on, ask yourself why.
Why?
Someone comes to conquer you. He doesn't want you to read for a long time because he was actually scared that
That you will
you
discover.
you from some of the books of the Bible, you could see that your history mirrored the history of other peoples who've been struggling. You know, they were worried that some of those passages where people were fighting, struggling for freedom might inspire us. That's why they didn't want us to read the Bible. But eventually they edited it, removed all the parts about struggle, left all the parts about be obedient to your master
Mm-hmm.
according to God's law. According to God's law, before they let us read the Bible.
That is profound. Oh my God, we're over an hour today. And I want to keep going on because, you know, there's so much to talk about. I don't know if we can just do a few more minutes and come back on this, and because I know there's so much, but we can't. Can we? You know what?
Well, basically, we Black people, we have to be mindful that the very first book we started reading was the Bible, and for some reason, it's also the only book we never finish reading. We'll go to. Can you imagine? We'll, from the age of 7, start investing in education, go to school, paying for school. You read physics, read chemistry, everything. But as you're reading school books, you're also reading Bible. But then one thing I've noticed about Africans is as soon as they finish uni and they give them a paper, say, okay, yeah, this is your certificate. All the books they were reading in school, they throw everything away, never to be read again. But then they continue reading one book, the Bible, continuously.
Which we
And
never
they never stop, they never finish reading it. That just tells you.
Let me make an excuse for why we never finished reading it, because it was written in King James English, King James Version, Old English, so hard to understand.
I mean, King James, he was even trying to use the Bible to pacify his own fellow white people. What more, us Black people, you know? And so we need to bear that in mind.
Yeah.
You know, you might read I mean, if you're reading the Bible and you never finish reading it, then do you really understand what you're reading? And this is why I'm saying that the African not reading has now become a problem, a big problem, because what they did was, okay, to them we're illiterate in their Latin-based languages, and they started controlling our education. And we've been miseducated, we've been misinformed. And because we don't read, we don't actually read, we're just reliant on them telling us.
Like what we do even now with our pastors. They read a scripture.
Exactly.
They
Thank
explain it
you.
the way they want to explain it, and we just run away with it. We
Thank
just go,
you.
"Ooh, it's so
Thank
sweet.
you.
It's so something that,
Thank
you know,
you.
we just go, and we don't even go back to reading the scripture that we also have access to. We just go and we make references to our pastors.
Yes. And you see, this was why they even wrote it down, that this was why we made excellent slaves, because we, like I said earlier in the show, I said the second part of this, the African does not read. He only listens to what he's told. That second part of it, he only listens to what he's told. It's very important. They realized once you broke the Black man into a slave and made him a slave, especially the Negroes, he only listened to what you told him. As long as you are an authority figure. That's why Black people today, we don't even listen to each other. We only listen to somebody who seems to be an authority figure, aka white supremacy, white people. That's why we bought into the white Jesus. I tell you something, I've been saying this. The day it is discovered that Jesus was not a white man, but maybe a Black man or some very dark-skinned Semitic man, Christianity will die in the Western world.
Guess what? There is an image in the Vatican that is not open for the public to see, where Mary and Jesus were
the Black Madonna.
King.
The Black
Mary
Madonna.
And Jesus are not even, they were not even looking like today's Ethiopians who are mixed with, you know, what you call them, you know. They are so black dark skin. The baby Jesus in the Vatican City,
The
hidden from
Black Madonna.
everyone's eyes, was a black Jesus.
Yeah,
There was no mistake when that image was made.
yeah,
There was no
yeah,
mistake. That was the truth. That was the real image of who Jesus was and who
yeah.
his mother was.
And remember, he's supposed to have run into Egypt. Imagine a white kid running into Egypt, running away from Herod. He
Yeah,
would have
that's
just stuck out like a sore thumb, you know.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
like I was saying, the day is discovered that Jesus was a black man, Christianity ended the Western world. White people cannot stomach worshiping a black man. But I'll tell you something ironically strange as well.
They're
The
already
day,
tired of
the,
worshiping the white Jesus anyway.
well,
But they're still the
but
ones
but
doing
but
Christianity in the West, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. We're still the ones carrying it on our head. But then I'll tell you something ironically sad as well, strangely sad as well. The day is discovered that Jesus is a black man, some black people too give up on Christianity just because he's a black man. Because they've been so programmed to respect that white authority, white supremacist authority. And this is what white supremacist education has done to many of us. When I keep saying we're the most miseducated people on the world, people think I'm being insulted, but they don't realize what has happened to us. You were talking earlier about Eurocentric history, the problem of Eurocentric history. Okay, let me even finish about our miseducation. And this is something I keep saying. I can't believe that educated black people cannot differentiate between these three words of nigger, Nigger, Niger, Niger, and
Mm,
nigger, Nigga. Some black people actually think those three words are three different things.
they're one and
And
the same.
exactly. And the fact that black people think they're different words leads me to realize that even the English black people are speaking, we don't really understand it. So just because they pronounce it differently, the same spelling, and then maybe one of them they add an extra G
Mhm.
and then pronounce it differently, you think they're two different words? And going back to the theme of this program that the black man doesn't read, if black people read, and especially your average Nigerian, yeah, who has that word Niger in the name of a country that has been called to represent him, Nigeria, Niger area or whatever, yeah, if they could just read, yeah, ordinary Wikipedia will tell them that even the word nigger, Nigger, eh, before they added two G's inside nigger, before they added two G's inside the word nigger, it was
Let's.
originally spelled with one G. Just this is from Wikipedia. In
Mm.
its original English language usage,
Can,
nigger, you can see it.
let's take myself off stream so that it's more clear.
Sorry?
I'll take myself off stream for a moment.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Can you see it? In its
Mhm.
original English language usage, nigger, Nigger, then spelled, that was back then spelled nigger, Niger, Niger, was a word for dark-skinned individuals. If only a Nigerian could read and see this, he realized that the very name of his country, Nigeria, was a slur, a racist slur from the racist British that were creating his country at that time. This is just proof of the problems of the black man not reading.
Right. I'll just acknowledge some people, take a few reads, and then we'll try to round up today and see that we continue this topic another day. But
I'll round up on Eurocentric, the problem of Eurocentric history. Yeah.
Princess Ivy Osawe from Canada, welcome. One TV says storytelling. Yes, storytelling was our thing. I remember even as a child, my grandmother, every time I went for long holidays, I could not wait for night time to
Yeah,
just
yes,
have
yes.
tea and just with other people. Just the stories were just like, oh wow, oh, and you can't not you always want to hear the same story told over and over again, but you
Yeah,
want to.
yes, exactly.
It
Exactly.
was,
You
oh my
the
god,
same.
and Open says probably why Nigeria outshine everyone else when they go to Western universities. They inherited old memory capability. But I think he's referring to the time where you mentioned, the apprenticeship thing that Igbo people
Yeah.
do mostly,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Obi Igbo says an indication of how strong our oratory skills were. The
Yes.
Karutan Fuga was which was the constitution of the Malian Empire. One of the first constitutions in the world was oral based.
Yes.
And
Yes.
one TV
Yes.
says truth and trust was their key. Nobody lied to anyone. True.
Yes.
And I know you're really beautiful. Stew maker. There's a stew maker who says good research, Starman. And one TV says Nigeria, dark people's area. That's what he's the meaning. And Kwame says the name Nigeria was given by Lady Lugard. That's what we thought, but no.
No.
That's what we thought.
Basically, before Lady Lugard decided to coin that name, when Lord Lugard was looking for a name to call the place,
yes,
that name had already been in use. Remember, they already created Southern Nigeria Protectorate before they coined the name, and Northern Nigeria Protectorate before the amalgamation. And history books from the mid 1800s, people were talking about, as in just explorers, were talking about going to the Niger area, Nigeria, to go and buy slaves, to go and see what was going on in the area. Who are these people being enslaved or enslaving each other? Yes. To go and see what was going on in the supposed Sudan. That's what they used to call the northern part then. So the name was in history books at least 75 years before Flora Shaw. At least. Right. So she didn't even coin that name.
Rounding up, you wanted to round up in Eurocentric what did you call it? So you made mention about the computer RAM, the human mind, how we are, read access memory or something like that.
Yes.
Now in the Eurocentric whatever, take us to the ROM of our computer, read only memory.
Right.
Let's use ways that we can understand and identify with to tell us, to simplify every information you're going to share with us in this last bit.
I'm going to talk about RAM and then lead on to Eurocentricity.
Right.
But let me start by saying but that I think the Europeans recognized the strength of mind we had. Because remember, I was telling you in the other program, when they first tried to sell Christianity to us, ancestors were like, they were laughing at the concept of Bible, that why would God write a book? And they even found it funnier that God would have a son. I mean, he's God. Why would he need to send somebody? When he has so many ways he could communicate with you, dreams, vision, whatever. Why would he need to send somebody to come and talk to you? So our forefathers found that hard to believe, to stomach Christianity. But so they knew we had a certain strength of mind. Even the way we fought them, especially during things like Ekumeku, or even the way we used to commit suicide just not to be taken into slavery. So they realized they needed to weaken our mind. And what they did was they focused on making our minds lazy. And all they did was just to play on just something that's actually very natural, a very natural human state of being. Now, like I was saying earlier, the brain is a computer, the most advanced computer known to man in the universe. It weighs about 3 pounds, made mostly of water, full of electrical signals, all your neurons, about 3 billion neurons. Yeah. And all these electrical signals in total generate or use about 60 watts of energy. That means the brain is actually very efficient, but it still draws energy. Now, this 60 watts of energy, what that means is that when you say you eat 100 grams of food, and that 100 grams of food is supposed to produce 100 calories of energy, your brain, the human brain draws a minimum of 20%. So your brain needs 20 of those calories to power itself. The human brain is the only brain in the animal kingdom that needs that much amount of energy to power itself. The nearest animal to us is the chimpanzees, and those ones need just 10%, as opposed to us, 20%. Things like insects need 0.3%, because they don't have to think too complex thought. They just have to think about food and mate, that's all, and survive. Food, mate, and don't get eaten. That's all. Most of their brain power is focused on carrying their heavy exoskeletons if they need to fly or that kind of thing. But us, our brain power is focused on more complex survival, and not just survival, but continuity in terms of our offspring. Now, this does not mean that the brain actually likes burning this energy. No. If it was up to the brain would rather be burning less than 20%. Why burn more energy than you need? That the energy, if you're burning more energy, it means that either your muscles or your bones are not getting their normal quota of energy, and you go lean or lose muscle mass or whatever. So the brain, tries to, and like I said, they focused on making us lazy. So today, the African is more focused on low value information, Facebook, instead of things that will actually make him think. This is why don't we read? Because if you read, you start thinking, and this is what Christianity ultimately was used for. Because when a doctrine, a fundamental program, like I said, religion is a fundamental operating system of the mind. When a fundamental operating system tells you, don't worry too much about this world, focus on what happens when you die, it already lays the foundation for a lazy mind. And that's where they got us. Now, talking about Eurocentric history, because they have largely written the history. So they've written history from their point of view. And from their point of view, they're always the good guys, the Europeans. And this is why Eurocentric history is based on their point of view, to the point where I'm sure it's happened to you, where you've been reading stories about maybe how the British were killing the Zulus, especially when you were a kid, and you found yourself supporting the British
against the Zulus.
Against the Zulus. Even though the Zulus didn't do them anything, they were the ones who left their own land, came to the Zulus' land looking for trouble. They shouldn't have even killed the Zulus like they massacred them, but they did anyway. But you were still rooting for them. You were still supporting them.
Because they've made themselves so lovable by ignorant Africans.
They've made themselves the heroes of history. That's what Eurocentric history did. It made the very culprits. And when I say Europeans, I don't mean all Europeans, because like I always say, the East Europeans were victims of the West, the slave master Europeans, the West Europeans. They've created a narrative with them central to it. And with this narrative, they've looted the rest of the world. And they are maintaining this narrative because they realize that should this narrative be shattered today, then they will be exposed for being psychopathic, genocidal maniacs. And all of a sudden, you now begin to get questions of reparations, compensation. As we know, the Jamaicans are suing for $15 trillion for reparation for slavery. India is lining up their own $45 trillion. China is lining up $10 trillion, all against Britain. This is to show you that. And the funny thing is, the British, they don't want to face up to their history. They keep singing, oh, Great Britain, we're great, They don't want to face up to their psychopathic history, that they had a history where they were just behaving like mad psychopaths, like lunatics.
Because when you were talking, you mentioned the Zulus. And I remember, for some of us who watched Shaka Zulu as children, go back and watch that movie again.
Yes.
I have watched that movie so many times over, and just a couple of months ago, I watched it, because it looks like we've watched it from a very long time ago, but as we begin to watch it with a different kind of perspective, mindset, then you begin to see there's a part that I will call your attention to, the part where Shaka Zulu was, his hair was dyed with black dye. He was beginning to age and gray was showing. So they dyed his hair for him. And he thought they had given him back his youth. And I can't remember everything, but I think his mother, who he loved so much, who was a great source of strength for him, I think she was dying or she was really sick. And
Yeah.
he had requested that the Europeans should give his mother back her youth the way they returned his youth to him,
Right.
because he
Right.
dyed his hair, and so he was looking. They showed it. They gave him a mirror, and
Yeah.
he was looking a lot younger without the
Yeah.
gray hair, and they couldn't. At that point, there was a conflict. The people who came on with guns
Yeah.
were in conflict with the people who had the Bible,
Yeah.
because the people who had the Bible, to a great extent, some of them were also tricked into, some of them were also tricked into going along with some of the things that happened on the African continent. Because there was this conflict where the Reverend Father wanted them to tell Shaka Zulu the truth, that his youth was not returned to him. But the people with the guns didn't want the truth to be told, because they were greatly afraid of Shaka Zulu's anger when he found
Mm.
out that they had lied to him.
I
And at
mean,
that point, and at
yeah.
that
Yeah.
point, of course, he had already given them a certain part. They requested a certain part of the land by the sea and all that. I
Mm.
can't remember all the, but you see, a great man like Shaka Zulu, a great king like Shaka Zulu, a warrior, a great warrior, even he fell victim to their lies.
I mean, not just him. I mean, so many of us, so many of our ancestors fell victim. Like, this is why I say their behavior is psychopathic. Because unless you're a psychopath, you can't really understand the psychopath. And a psychopath almost never listens to you. It doesn't matter if you cry, beg, fight. His agenda is his agenda. He will not stop. You know, um, uh, I the Chaka the Zulu film I saw. I mean, I can't quite remember that part, but the one I remember seeing was quite raw, just about from his childhood to how he changed the nature of warfare in that region, Southern Africa. Because originally, and this to show you that we Africans, we are not psychopaths. We're not cold-blooded killers from time. We didn't have a culture of warfare. Before Chaka, warfare in Southern Africa was okay, your village has a dispute with my village. On a decided day, you match your men to one side of the hill. I'll match my men to the other side of the hill. And then we start mocking each other, start abusing each other. Okay, in the middle of the abuse, maybe we throw some spares just to see if our spares can reach you and yours can reach us. And sometimes maybe there'll be an accident, a spare will actually hit someone. But by the end of the warfare, the group that gets tired or feels or mocks the other one the most has won. And at the end of the warfare, maybe just 2 or 3 people will die from accidents. Just 2 or 3 people. What Chaka did what King Nama, the guy that created the Egyptian civilization, did. He saw foreigners coming into his land. He realized, I need to gather my people together to save my land. And Chaka united all the other Zulu tribes and realized it's not just even about uniting them for numbers. No, turn them into a proper fighting force. And that's what he did. But yeah, he still didn't understand, because he was not a psychopath, but he still didn't understand the psychopathic nature of the Western Europeans. And he didn't know that these people, they are, like Terminator, when that guy, Reese, in the first part of the first Terminator film, when Reese, that soldier from the future, was telling Sarah Connor that that's a Terminator. It cannot be bargained with. It cannot be reasoned with. And it absolutely will not stop until you are dead. That's the attitude of the Western Europeans. Until today, they still have that attitude.
Right. So really quickly, let's round up, but we'll continue this conversation on another day. But that day, we're going to, I want everyone watching who likes to, do a bit of research for themselves to go and watch The Lion King. Because on the day when we continue this conversation, I want us to analyze the movie The Lion King. There is a reason why I've said so. Because we end up loving movies, celebrating the characters, and not understanding how insulting it has been, even in that
Yeah.
that little story of the Lion King for us Black people.
Because of Eurocentricity.
Right. So quickly just round up Starman. I almost called you
yeah.
Obi-Man. Okay, just before you round up, I'll just take the last set of reads and you round up and we call it a day. And then, of course, in a few days, in a couple of days, we will come back to analyzing the movie The Lion King and continue from where we stopped in today's broadcast. Obi-Man says, I like that religion. I like that religion, the oops of the mind. One TV says they slaved themselves to Slovakia, and the rest of East Europeans were enslaved by these heartless slave masters.
Yeah.
Says Nigerians are taught to pray to God in the sky rather than think to resolve problems. Yeah. I like to pray to a higher power, but I like the fact that I'm not I'm not abusive anymore to the point where I feel like all my problems have some kind of will have to come be all my problems will be solved by some spiritual intervention. Synovia Reedy says the white cowboys always were the heroes. Actually, cowboys are African Americans. African American cowboys are everywhere in Texas. Yeah, I saw the movie with Denzel Washington. That movie was he was a cowboy. He was the bad guy. I loved that movie. I can't remember what it's called now. And one TV says a psychopath has no soul. Strongly believe that ignorance is not an excuse simply to justify his or her brutality towards another. And Johnny Boy says Western people can pay any reparation. I think he meant a fee. Why? Because the money is made by the machine. That's a point.
No, they're not going to pay. They're not going to pay. I mean, Jamaica is suing them for 15 trillion, India 45, China 10. And then you can imagine when the African countries now join in.
Oh.
When the,
You're right.
Yeah.
Quickly start my round of.
Okay.
Let's try to manage the next 5 minutes to round up, really.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, I mean, there's so much more I could even say, but talking about another culture of literacy. Okay, even when Islam and Christianity did come into Africa, they were being written down. When Islam came in, remember Timbuktu, one of the world's first universities. It's not as if those books in Timbuktu were written by Africans.
And that's why it was burnt down, even though they say we're the ones that fought ourselves and burnt it down.
When Christianity came to Ethiopia, it was originally written in the Gaia script. It's ironic that we Africans, we've preserved other people's cultures with our scripts, but not ours. Come on. It's painful. It's so painful.
Right.
Right.
So I believe that's your final words for today. It's so painful because we have preserved other people's culture, but didn't do the same for ourselves. But finally,
yeah. Let me just say one more thing. Now, I think to tackle this problem of the African not reading, let me just talk about some sort of solution now. I think, and I've been saying this critically, I think, like I even said earlier at the beginning of the show, all Africans, in fact, the whole planet needs counseling, even white people for their psychopathy. They need counseling, and us for the trauma. But for Black people, I think that trauma starts with going to go and read your history and trying as much as possible not to read it from a Eurocentric, trying to rise above that Eurocentric point of view. Because, when you have a sense of history, you begin to have a sense of yourself. And you begin to also realize where the mistakes happened and what the mistakes are and what needs to be done to correct those mistakes.
Right. Right.
So
thank you, Starman. Yeah. We're going to hook up again here on Saturday. And guys, as we round up today, I want for us, some of us who don't know about the Bible, to go and read about the character Lilith. There is a character, Lilith, that is not very well spoken of in the Bible. Just go into your Google and type in Lilith. we want to begin to understand Lilith's position in the story of creation according to the Bible. Why? Because um, there have been arguments and conflicting stories about who this Lilith is. Some people say she was the first wife of Adam. Some people say she was a demon. However, whether she was his first wife or not, she was a demon. And most of the stories agree. And we want to analyze and understand the character Lilith on Saturday. Why? Because we will also compare the Bible's description or story of creation and compare to what science tells us and begin to understand some of these things for ourselves. All right. Yes. So Synovia Ridley says, please spell the name. Okay, I'll quickly do that now before we round up. Can you do that for me quickly? Right. Yes. So on Saturday, Synovia, you're a horrible speller. No worries. We all have our weak points. Yes. And that's a spelling of Lilith. So let's go and look for Lilith, read about Lilith, and compile all the information. Because when we come here on Saturday, we don't want to do nursery school kind of teaching. We want you to be well informed, aware of the character Lilith, and be able to also throw in a few points here and there. All right. So that we can dissect who she is. And we will be joined by a sister called Mina. I've known her since I was very young in secondary school. She lives in the United States of America. She's done great research on Lilith. We will be here with Lilith, with Starman, and guess who is going to join us? My own son, Ryan. He will be joining us. The boy is something else. He does his own research and stuff. And sometimes some things I've never got to know about. He's the first one to tell me about these things, and I go and I look it up. So yes, we'll all come here, converge here, and decipher, dissect the story of Lilith. So
Yeah.
thank you, Starman. I'll see you on Saturday.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, family. I love you all, and we will catch up here on Saturday. Let's talk about Lilith. Who is Lilith? Why? What does the Bible say about her? What is her position in the story of creation? Is she really the first wife of Adam, or is she a demon? But from my research, whether or not you agree that she is the first wife of Adam, one thing is common, that she truly was very demonic. But we want to know more and see how it plays out. And of course, we want to compare the Bible's version of the story of creation to what science has been able to prove. And so that we can begin to understand some of the stories that we read in the scriptures and understand if some of the stories were told from the concept of a generation and society and culture and their perception of the world and life, as opposed to the facts. All right. Just come with an open mind. Don't come here with a closed mind where you're already, objecting to things without reasoning it. I come here to analyze this story even as a Bible believing Christian. So you can imagine, if I can do that, you should be able to come open minded. Let's have this discussion. Okay. I'll see you on Saturday, God willing, at 6 p.m. Love you and goodbye. Like, follow, share, subscribe to our channels. It's Africa Rise TV on YouTube, Africa Rise TV on Facebook, and Africa_Rise.TV on Instagram. I love you all and see you then. Bye-bye.